Hey, this is Driver 88. Welcome to another episode. So I've noticed recently that the new GLC63 has started to hit the streets, as well as the website. And that car, which was incredibly popular over the last 10 years, I kind of look at and think, geez, what is a V8, a final V8 worth these days, and is it as good of a car than I thought of in the past? So I've tried to track one down and take it for a drive. So we're sitting in a GLC63 S V8 AMG. Is it worth potentially buying one of these than looking at the new car? We'll find out at the end of this video. Now let's quickly discuss the looks. I personally think that this sort of mid-size SUV is quite a good looking thing compared to its competition. It's relatively muscular but also rounded. It offers a decent amount of space, and for those triggered by the SUV moniker, try not to be. Just think of this car as, I guess, a large hot hatch. That's the way I see it, a family hot hatch, because the whole point of buying this thing is having a little bit of elevation so it's easy to get in and out of, and it's all about that big boot. So you know, you're a person who enjoys performance driving, you want a V8, but you also need to put a whole bunch of groceries and stuff for your kids or your partner, etc., in the back of it. You also want to have a little bit of space for people sitting in the back, but all-wheel drive is also, I guess, a happy extra additive to have in performance for an everyday driving vehicle. So that's the whole point of the sub SUV, and I think it looks really quite good compared to the others. So let's talk some numbers just quickly. This is a 2022 model, which was the final V8. This car's got 30,000 kilometers on it, which is like 20,000 miles. We've got 3 years left on the full warranty, which is definitely a bonus. It's potentially going to cost more to service than the new car, but the new car is also going to be over $200,000 after all on-roads, taxes and options and things like that. So you're getting a fairly decent saving. This was $190,000 at the time of it being sold, although you probably could have gotten a discount. Speaking of discounts, now that Mercedes has moved to the sort of online model like Tesla, you're not able to get any, and you sort of just are set with a price, and you can't get dealerships to cannibalize themselves and give you a better price like you can with potentially a slightly used example of this final V8. Now, the performance, of course, if you're considering one of these, I think it's all going to be about the performance, right? And the V8 that's sitting under the hood. Just over 500 horsepower and 700 Newton meters, 3.8 seconds, 0 to 100. The new car does 3.5, but let's be honest here. I think for the years that I've known AMG enthusiasts, they're the sort of groups of people on average that aren't massively into the very, very fastest 0 to 100 time. They're generally people that want to enjoy the experience. They're sort of after more cruising, top speeds, a mixture of engine sounds and feel is what they are looking for. And that is what you're going to get in this car at a fairly decent discount to buying the new 4-cylinder one. So this is the interior of the GLC63, the final V8. This was a facelift, which gave a much needed improvement on the screen here, which is a lot more responsive and a little bit wider. It's not the best setup having two separate screens. I wish they were both recessed and together like the E-Class and S-Class of years before, but it's much better than the first GLC C-Class 205 screens, especially this one in front of you. It's nice and clear, bright and easy to use. It's all business in here, guys. Ambient lighting, which you can change. Everything's black. Leather, you've got this sort of faux timber black sort of setup here. Some people like these cup holders that kind of can disappear. Some people don't like this bit. The steering wheel here, I think this is updated quite a number of times in this generation. Now, I personally like this steering wheel, mixture of Alcantara and leather. They don't wear as well as the older W204 steering wheels, and just in general in here, although this one has held up pretty well. It's only got 30,000 kilometers, I think, on it. But it's got the large sunroof as well, and a decent amount of space in the back. Let's head on back there. Into the rear of the GLC63, I can tell you at 180 centimeters tall, I have quite a decent amount of knee room. We've got dual Type-C ports here underneath, aircon. These rear seats are a little bit hard. I'll have to ask a review from this guy later. We've got, as I said, quite a decent amount of space, very good visibility. My head is nowhere near the roof of these dual panoramic sunroofs. Yeah, it's very just black and all business in here, quite comfortable. The rear seats are a little bit hard, but this kind of is an AMG after all, but you do not feel particularly cramped because the visibility is really good in here, and it's not a bad place to sit for a prestige vehicle. Now, even though I'm not a big fan of this central screen with its large borders, it is, I think, better than the enormous, stupid iPad situation setup that is in the new 4-cylinder GLC63. So you're kind of not in a perfect scenario either way. Now, we also have a relatively updated key with this one. And of course, it's all about the V8. Let's start it up and have a listen. And that little twist in the engine bay and that sound, we also have a heads-up display here, is just really what you're paying for. I mean, that's all about an AMG, right? Just that experience of turning it on and feeling a little bit special every time you take it for a drive, no matter what you're doing on that trip. Hold the paddle. Emotional start.
I'm very emotional.
Yeah, me too. So the first impressions of the 63, just cruising around in comfort mode now. And it is still relatively stiffly sprung. This is not going to be an extra comfortable car, of course, being an AMG. I'm trying to put everything in the softest settings here. So comfort, and we still kind of have a bit of body roll and a little bit of crash coming through the cabin, but you sort of forgive it given the fact that you have quite large rims, of course, sport orientated tires, low profile, but for day to day, I don't think too many people will be turned off by this. Let's just wake this little guy up a little bit. The best thing about these twin turbo V8s, the hot V V8s, is just that responsiveness. Even in comfort mode, you don't need to have a big weight before you get the performance, and it just comes on in such a fantastic way. We do have just over 500 horsepower, and that 4-cylinder has 680 horsepower or 670, whatever it is, 500 kilowatts. However, this car is 250 kilos lighter, I'll put up pounds on the screen, than the newer car. So even though you've got 300 more Newton meters worth of torque, you've got 250 plus kilos worth of weight. And it's really satisfying even just to drive this thing slowly. I used to own a C63 507. And it was one of the most satisfying cars to drive in everyday traffic and just to cruise around in and just feed the performance out. And I think that's what you sort of get with this car, on top of the fact that you can accommodate your family or lots of space or lots of groceries or whatever other activity you're doing. And of course, day-to-day driving, there's just so much more usable performance. The W205 C63, as soon as you do a little bit of modifications or really want to put your foot down, you're spinning the wheels till such a high speed and in most situations. Now, I understand that can be fun, but for a car which is going to be used in all sorts of conditions like this, and you want to have usable performance, the all-wheel drive is just a great additive. Now, I'm not a big fan of the steering feel. There's not a huge amount of it, but with a modern car like this, that, you know, being a sort of mid SUV size, and for what its purpose is, I guess I'm not too fussed in the fact that it doesn't have a lot of steering feel. Now, if you want to dial things up and put it into sport mode and use your paddles of this 9-speed shift, I tell you, over the years, this 9-speed has gotten much better than the sort of earlier generations and earlier software iterations. It's really gotten to the point where there was a decent amount of time where it just did not compete with this ZF 8-speed that's in everything else. But this has come a long way, and you know what, it's satisfying enough to use with the paddles. I just love the way these V8s deliver performance, just so satisfying. We'll press our exhaust button so I can open up the valves, and there it is. It's a bit of body roll in that corner, but it's such an eager engine. It's such an eager engine, always wants to deliver performance. Now, you can easily get 100 or 200 more horsepower from a small list of mods with these V8s. If you want to do an intake or a tune, you can get rid of your warranty. But honestly, I mean, I don't know if you're going to really need it. It might be worth keeping your warranty and just enjoying this car stock. And I don't usually say that in these reviews. Things that stand out to me with driving this guy, just the burble. You know, you can feel the fact that you're in an AMG all the time. I really like the heads-up display. One thing I don't particularly like, it's not enormous, but some of these interior parts, they look good, but you know what? They do creak just a little bit. Just a little bit. You might have seen some of those videos that are exaggerated on the internet, but yeah, there's just a few pieces that, like, you put your arm down, it's a little bit of creaking, but that might bother some people. It might not bother others at all. It's just a little thing that I've noticed. But the experience is dominated by the engine, like all the AMGs of old. What I love also is how quickly you can just throw this thing in race mode and not have to stuff around with any other buttons to do a launch control. It's just straight on the brakes, the gas, and you're on your way at 3.8 seconds. And you can spin all 4 wheels and do a really easy controllable drift if you wish, which makes things just that more entertaining. As I said. Now, if fuel consumption is a concern for you, this is probably not the car for you. I would probably be looking at the X3M competition facelift instead. This car has delivered over the last few thousand kilometers around 13 liters per 100. I'll put up the miles per gallon on screen now, and that might be too high for you. You may be better off with the twin turbo 6. But, I mean, you are getting an experience for all that fuel being burnt. I can tell you that. On the brakes, I mean, this car is 1,800 plus kilos. And it does move around a bit. When you're hard on the brakes, you feel the weight come over the wheels a substantial amount, but nothing like a Range Rover or something like that. The turning circle is particularly impressive, which for everyday use, I tell you, is a really, really good thing. So the final V8 GLC63 S AMG, $140 or so thousand versus a new one, which now sits at 213 grand. I think if you can find a good example with still 3 years of warranty, I think this is quite a good bet, because you're benefiting from a bit of the previous owner's depreciation while still getting the satisfaction of the V8. I think this is a really quite well-rounded car, even though it is dominated by that V8. I certainly would consider one. I'd consider one over the Q5 as well as the X3M comp. This is Driver 88. Thank you very much for watching.